In the 1760s, a Scottish poet and translator, James Macpherson, published a translation of what he claimed was a 3rd century poetry cycle by the poet Ossian. These epic poems inspired people across the world. Thomas Jefferson declared that Ossian was the greatest poet that has ever existed. Napoleon carried an Italian translation of the poems during his campaigns, and the poems were strongly influential on artists and writers such as Goethe and Walter Scott. The poems of Ossian were widely compared to the epics of Homer, the Iliad and the Odyssey. Ossian was nicknamed the Homer of the North. But shortly after the poems were published, other scholars raised questions. They argued that the poems were simply appropriations of an Irish mythological cycle, the Agalav na Shelarach, the Colloquy of the Ancients, which concerns the exploits of the warrior poet Oisin, the son of Fionn McCool. The debate continues 250 years later, and now there are new mathematical and interdisciplinary tools to bring to bear on the problem. Using the techniques of statistical physicists, scientists at Coventry University and partners at Galway and Oxford universities analysed the networks involved in the poems. Every character in the epic is a node in the network. They are connected to other nodes in the network based on whether their relationship is friendly or hostile. Using these techniques, a very detailed model of the inter-character relationships can be made. All societies can be described in terms of their social networks, a very low-level approach that maps the connections between individuals. By comparing the aggregated network of the poems of Ossian to the networks of Greeks and Trojans in the Iliad, it becomes obvious that the social relationships are very different. The Homeric epics have little or no relation to Ossian in terms of network structure. However, when you compare Ossian to the Irish Oisin, the networks are remarkably similar, far more so than could be accounted for by chance. Some of the names are different, but the underlying social connections are very close. Why would Macpherson connect Ossian's work to the Greeks and downplay connections to Irish poetry? Tellingly, one of his earliest critics, Samuel Johnson, described Gaelic as the rude speech of a barbarous people. The English elites preferred to characterise the Celts as unsophisticated savages, whereas classical Greece and Rome were very much in vogue. Nevertheless, the research indicates that in terms of social networks, the poems of Ossian are much closer to the Fenian cycle and demonstrates the powerful influence of Irish myths and poems on British and indeed global culture.